There are more than 85 million people saw this post, and it's just insane of how widely it spread. They shared it, endorsed it, and some even lost sleep over it. AI is bigger than COVID, but cites no employment data. He also says share it before it's too late by simply broadcasting his own anxiety about his own job at an AI company. Most of the 80 million readers likely went away with the wrong lesson. Not because the data is wrong, there was no data to begin with, but because Matt Shumer is a very good storyteller, the way he tells just hypnotizes you to believe every single false argument he makes. So I spent 20 hours cross-referencing the sci-fi he wrote with the latest employment reports and data. I found a very different story from what Matt Shumer claims. If you read his post the way most people did and have decided to act upon it, you're making a wrong call. You either be cutting people that you still depend on, springing to AI without a plan, or swapping real strategy just for a shiny AI tool. I'm going to show you a real simple demand curve that diffuses every single AI is taking over claim. So by the end of this, I hope that you can avoid 3 biggest mistakes that 80 million people are making right now that the data actively argue against. The first mistake, cutting too fast. I'll show you the curve in a moment, but first, separately from Shumer's post, Anthropic published this report about a week after. One of the charts that probably inspired hundreds of LinkedIn takes about countdown of software engineering jobs, confirming Shumer's point. That's only half the story, as always. This is the one in the report, and you have likely already seen it in the last few days. This blue area is the theoretical AI coverage of 22 different jobs. In plain English, that each job listed, for example, that large language model could cover 90% of tasks in computer and math, and 90% of tasks in office and admin. However, here's what fewer people talked about. The same charts, the same jobs, and the same exact data, but the other half of the chart is always overlooked. Now, stop staring at this obvious blue part. Instead, this color change, have a look at the red area here and the gap between this red area and the blue area, because that's what's actually happening in workplaces right now. For instance, Claude currently only cover about 33% of tasks in IT. So there's this at least 60-point gap between what AI could do versus what people are actually doing with AI. I actually have been using this study to track how AI impact employment since 2023, based on the exact same study that in 2026 Anthropic built its framework upon. And the finding remains the same. The gap between theoretical and observed is really enormous. Exactly this gap is all the proof you need to see that there's something people like Shumer just don't understand, or that it's not in their interest to explain, because if they did, the panic would be a lot less shareable. However, it's also exactly where the first mistake gets made. Many leaders learned that AI could now do 90% of the task and then pull the trigger to fire people tomorrow. Remember what happened in many of the AI transformation stories since 2023? The leaders just rushed into AI transformation and cut headcounts and then discovered that tools don't perform as well as in the demo. And then only to scramble months later to rebuild the human capacity that they've just removed. And this is our mistake number 1, treating the AI could do most tasks on paper as a green light to cut the humans who make those tasks actually work in the real world. So now you might think this gap is just temporary, but no, I will explain it to you very soon. It isn't temporary. People have been trying to close this AI transformation gap since 2022. Just a quick note, if this kind of an empirical audit is useful to you, use the hype button on this video. It tells YouTube to show this to more people who are tired of AI marketing decks. Let me tell you why AI has been replacing your job for the last 6 years and hasn't. And it's all about the physics of why this is taking so long. Before we move on to the second mistakes, rewind and back to 2022. When GPT-3 was first launched, analysts were already writing that it's only the matter of time that it will replace customer support, it will replace engineering. And that was 6 years ago. Customer service still isn't fully automated. The slowest part of any system controls the speed of the whole system. Let's say cooking dinner. You can chop vegetables in 2 minutes, boil pasta in 8, but if the sauce needs 30 minutes to simmer, then the meal takes 30 minutes. Let me use this rate determinant step chart to explain the concept further. If you still remember it from your chemistry lesson, of course, an example of how a scientific principle perfectly explains how we run our society. Let's look at the first hump here. It's the things that already can be done by AI in an organization. It clears fast. The second one though, that's the human stuff, and the cost of crossing this hurdle is much higher. Just think about the last time you brought in a new person to your team. The person maybe has an impressive CV and could theoretically handle everything, but on day one, they don't know that legal team reviews every new vendor and the queue is always 6 weeks out. They don't know the main database has been wrong for 3 years long, but no one knows, nobody fixed it, and there is a spreadsheet. The gap between what they could do and what they can actually deliver is two entirely different things. I want to emphasize this. It isn't about the task at all, but everything around it. The messy systems, the regulation, the bottlenecks, the politics, and all the unwritten rules that people follow without realizing it. To expand on this, AI is actually worse than any new hire because AI never fully catches up since organizations themselves keep changing new clients, new regulations, new internal politics. The context resets faster than any model can learn it. So this is exactly why the adoption gap exists. The work that was always there, but never got to do. So this is the curve that I was talking about. This is called the long tail chart, the exact chart that will help you keep your AI sanity in the next 10 years. The left side, head of the curve, this is where all mass market software lives. The tools you use every day. Every SaaS company was built to solve the problem in this area. For example, Salesforce. It exists because millions of sales teams needed CRM, or Canva existed because hundreds of millions of people want to quickly design something without using pro-level tools like Photoshop. The economics worked because the market is large enough to justify the build. But inside every one of these companies and inside every company using those tools, there is a different list. The internal report that has to go to one client in a specific format, the approval workflow that's unique to your compliance setup, or the dashboard that your CFO really wants, which is slightly different from the one your BI tools has already generated for your other C-level teams. These are trivial, yes, but they are also the majority of your daily work. These automatable tasks have always been in the backlog, not because nobody wanted it done, the complete opposite, but simply because the engineering cost never really justified the output. Important, yes, but never urgent enough to move to the top. So it sat there. AI, however, makes these tasks visible again and actionable for the very first time. Maybe by the engineers, or maybe even by the internal users themselves. You need to understand one thing is that the demand was always there, the capacity wasn't. And that's exactly why Citadel Security found software engineering post up 11% year on year. This is also the reason why BLS projects AI exposed roles was still growing among the rest, not shrinking. The backlog is now finally adjustable in 2026. However, here comes mistake 2, which is treating more AI as a plan instead of deciding what actually needs to be changed. When one person now do what took 3 people before, you don't, however, automatically get a linear organization. You get a maybe moving faster one. You need to know though, however, a faster car with no direction just gets you killed sooner. What you'd end up with is maybe 2 people solving the exact same problem independently because nobody has defined the ownership or internal tools built that contradict with your entire workflow. Now look at the right side of this exact same curve, the long tail. This is where thousands of real painful problems that have been sitting for decades, but no company ever built a suitable solution, not because nobody needed one, but because the market was just too small to justify a dev team. For example, this is something I talked about in my latest post. Permit processes in California that takes 600 more days because one code citation is slightly wrong, or a cardiologist in Brussels is watching patients forget half of what he just told them, or a road technician in Uganda who physically just can't drive fast enough or cover enough grounds to assess the damages. These problems are real. The people living those problems on the day-to-day basis know exactly what's broken, but no VC fund those because the economics never worked until now. AI coding tools changed the equation because now one person who deeply understands the problem can finally build something useful for maybe 200 users and have it actually function. I wrote about this in detail in Anthropic Hackathon. I explained 3 principles of building winning products in the AI era. So come back to mistake 3. It's basically building a faster engine for a car when you still haven't picked a destination. The people who take Shumer's post seriously aren't asking, what kind of problem do I really understand better than anyone and can be resolved by AI? But they are asking, what should I do now so I don't get replaced by AI? That's the logic running backward. Most people think tool first, then hoping a problem worth solving just appears. And that produces a very specific pattern. New AI subscriptions every week, signed up for many prompt engineering courses, and updating the LinkedIn bios to AI native. People will rush into the movements that look like progress, but has 0 direction. Now, I want to re-emphasizing the difference between what AI could do versus what AI does, because understanding this gap will really become your advantage. First off, this gap isn't a warning nor a countdown as everyone else was saying, but it is going to be your best opportunity and your even working environment for the next few years. Now, let's recap those 3 mistakes. Companies that failed at their AI transformation because the edge cases go deep and wide than anyone would thought, and the knowledge that broke the system lived in the people they cut. That's mistake 1. AI slows hardest in the rules with implicit knowledge, entwined relationship, and unspoken rules with no clear organizational direction. The acceleration will only kill you faster. And that's mistake 2. And if you're still asking, what tool do I need, instead of what problem do I really own, that's mistake 3. Put it in comments, tell me which mistake have you seen the most. Type 1, 2, 3 below. What Shumer wrote in his post, he collapses all the caveats. What AI could do, what's exposed, and what's deployed, and what happens to the jobs into one biased story for very narrow outcome. You, however, you're likely the person who knows some really specific problems deep enough to direct the tool accurately, aren't going to be replaced, and the complete opposite. So now if you know someone who read Shumer's post and is now making one of those 3 mistakes, please send them this video. And the data in this video and in my article is faster read than the panic. And if you really want to go deeper on the adoption gap, I did a full breakdown of the Anthropic hackathon of what connects directly to mistake 3. The video is linked right here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.